SmashFactor.
Ripping driver, going for it. Oh my goodness. How about that tee shot?
That is crazy how far that is.
Wow. John Daly, take a back seat, big fella. How about that drive?
That's an aggressive line. Man, that is beyond long.
Look at this, he's just driven the green. He has just driven the green.
I guess hello world, huh?
Hello world. Corner OGs, what's going on? SmashFactor, Northern Trust Edition, episode 79. I think we are moving right along. I am pumped to be back. I know I've been fairly absent the last month or so with a lot of different things going on, but I am pumped to be back. Gup is taking a day off. He is currently working on a business deal, so I have the pleasure of hosting, and we are joined by our man with a new Twitter handle, Rick Run Good. What's going on, my man?
Hey, yeah, I've already screwed it up a couple times and said, oh, it's at DFS On Demand. It is not. It is at Rick at Rick Run Good. So I've confused myself and everyone else. But yeah, good. I've got some big shoes to fill here, but stoked to be with you guys.
That's awesome, man. So let's jump into, and we'll do it real quick because I know people want to get to kind of this upcoming week. But how was your week last week when it comes to DraftKings and fantasy golf?
Yeah, I probably lost something like 18, 20. I lost to the rake, 18 or 20%, whatever the rake is. I had plenty of KC to see him fall back a little bit on Sunday. Hurt. I did have a decent bit of Webb, but it's good. I think that I would prefer tournaments that, you don't have to shoot 6 under par every day to be in the lead. Or you make one bogey, or in Paul Casey's case, you make one double and you're kind of out of the whole thing. So I'd prefer it to be a little bit more low scoring. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was fairly chalky. I think like the top 11.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the top 11 owned guys all made the cut. So when the chalk hits, I usually do not.
Yes. No, I think with Webb being kind of like the guy everybody was looking at last week, and for him to hit, and then with On making the mess of 18 that he did, and Simpson moving up to second, I think that swayed a lot of things. And so but you're right. I think having an event where a single bogey is literally the difference. I mean, we'll talk about it now. JT Poston, I mean, he came into the event saying he was feeling it and feeling like he was close, but he just had to play better. And he went 72 holes without a bogey.
that is feeling it for sure. Now, although I imagine if you poll like all 140 golfers every week, they're all like feeling it, right? They all feel themselves on Wednesday and Thursday morning. It's after you get your teeth beat in a little bit on the first couple holes, you might not be feeling yourself. But no, seriously incredible. Like, I mean, to go absolutely bogey free for 72 holes, for him to hold on, for him to pull it off with, and in that situation, like everyone's chasing you down. Like you can't make pars and hold on to this thing. Like you just got to keep, foot on the pedal. Yeah. So it was impressive stuff.
Yeah, it was super impressive. And I think it's just mind boggling how, I mean, everybody says it, that's their slogan, how good those guys are, but you go 72 holes without a bogey, without a mistake, and you barely win. I mean, barely. And so it's just super impressive.
I'm just more impressed how deep the PGA Tour is, right? I mean, we had the great Tiger run for so long, which I love. Like, I love the dynasty, but now it's like any given week, there's 15 like stars, and then like anybody can win it. Lashley can go out and win it. Adam Long can win it. Max Homa can win it. Like, it's really cool to see how deep and how good all these guys are.
Yeah, and to that, and we're going to touch on it later, but I think because it's so deep, I think the pricing on DraftKings has gotten significantly harder to kind of figure, or talk about in a little bit, but like Bryson and Morikawa are priced virtually the same this week. And those kind of, like, if you had said that last year to somebody, they would have told you to go F yourself. So like the fact that they're priced together, not only priced together, but seemingly fit there, and you actually have to think about it, is just staggering.
Yeah, the edges are a little bit smaller. I think that you really kind of have to embrace the volatility a little bit, right? You have to understand that, hey, any one of these like 25 guys legitimately could win this tournament. And maybe it's even more than that on a given week. And I think once you really wrap your head around that and start to embrace it in some of the decisions that you make, like, you're going to be wrong a lot. Golf is hard in general. And then you already get, such a deep field, especially this week. I mean, this really is one of the better fields of the year when you just get the top 125 who are all playing well or have, proven their chops over the course of the season. Like, this is a legit field and there's a ton of guys who can win it.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I'd say a higher percentage of guys in this field compared to any other field outside of a major maybe have the chance at winning this event. And so it is going to be a good week. Before we move on, I do want to cover real quick because JB Gup, they were down there at the event, courtesy of Harold Varner. So I do want to touch on that real quick. I know JB and Gup, they had a blast. Varner was amazing. Like, hooked him up the first couple nights and got inside the ropes and was able to talk to him one-on-one for a couple hours and that kind of thing. So kudos to him, class act. He's somebody that we're going to keep in touch with. And then on top of that, we raised over $540 in the community to the HV3 Foundation with kind of the bets that we made on eagles and birdies. So I was hoping it was going to be a bit more. He came out fairly hot the first couple days and then kind of just flattened out. But again, he's another guy that's been playing pretty well in the field again this week. Real quick shout out to H Boss, 631 points this past week. Won our listener league by 26 points. He had Armour, Dahman, Kokrak, Poston, Reed, and Simpson. So just silly numbers. And so this was actually, I didn't touch on it because I didn't play. This was the first week in maybe 3 years I did not have one single lineup in DraftKings or FanDuel this week. And so it's hard for me to talk about last week because I literally didn't play for the first time, but I saw a lot of the scores coming in, and 631 is just astronomical.
Yeah, that's a big number when you get the winner who was, I don't know what he was. What was Poston owned in that event? Do you have it up in your contest?
I don't, but it was.
I don't know if you have it handy. That's okay. So I'm sure it was a couple of percentage, right? So you nail the winner, like, single digits. Then you go get Webb solo 2. Like, this is just filled with, and actually it could have been even higher because Armour goes 2 over on Sunday, kind of backs all the way up.
I know, right?
It's such a legit lineup.
Crazy. I know, and that's kind of what happened to Gup. Gup was like top 5 in the 44 going into Sunday. You saw the madness on Sunday. Everybody was going low. He had 2 guys in his lineup shoot over par. Just diabolical Sunday. Yeah,
you lose like 50 spots on the field. It's brutal.
Yeah, it was insane.
You got to fill it up.
So first one was what? 2% owned. JB coming in from deep. JB. Thanks, brother. Yeah. Before we get into Liberty National real quick, I do need to tell everybody about some sponsors, affiliates. Download the Thrive Fantasy app. Use a promo code GUP. You'll get $10 free with your first deposit of $20. Deposit bonus is for a limited time, so get that free money while you can. Fanshare Sports, 20% off if you use the code GUP. Get the pro advantage. And then last but not least, Fantasy National Golf Club, FNGC. Use the tools we use, fantasynational.com/GUP. Click on that link and you will get 20% off your next subscription. Also, as usual, rate, review on iTunes, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all of it. Now, to this week, we are at Liberty National. This is the first week of the playoffs. We are starting out with the top 125. This week's a little bit different than previous years. Instead of 4 events for the playoffs, we have 3. And so they're going to cut it from 125 to 70 this week, and then 70 to 30 going to Atlanta. And so this is a big week. It's cutting out one full event is a major deal, and they're playing for much larger stakes. So real quick, what I'll do is I will cover the course, and then I'll kick it over to you, Rick, and give some feedback or insight what you're seeing. But they are at Liberty National Golf Club in Jersey City. Speaking of which, the DK Sportsbook is located in Jersey City, and they are not hosting any sort of event this week. They're not for the live final. There is no live final, but they're not hosting anything for this week. That in itself is a travesty.
This is such a big whiff. Like, okay, they've got the final this week. I wonder where we could host a live one. Is there any place nearby? And like we were talking, you don't even have to be at a tournament to host something like this. And the fact that all the stars aligned for this to be like the live final spot and it's not happening is like kind of head scratching.
Yeah, this is like a massive whiff. I mean, JB, myself, Gup, most of the team were down for the Sports Betting National Championship. And it is, again, you don't have to be at the event. Like there's so many opportunities to have the live coverage and then each of the individual NBC Gold sports coverages on all the other screens and then just chill for an entire weekend. And yeah, you're right. It is such a big miss on their part, especially with it being at Liberty National, literally right down the street. It's just mind-boggling. But
yeah, I think this is, if I had to wager, this is probably the last year there is not a live final, but would have been cool to see.
Yeah, and I don't know if they were waiting to ink the deal with the PGA Tour or whatnot, but yeah, I'm super, super stoked to see what they do next year. We, as a team, kind of boycotted doing any of the qualifiers this year because, one, it wasn't a live final, and you're paying rake to get into a raked event, and so we just said screw it. But next year, I'm really, really excited to see what they do. But this week, they're at Liberty National. In Jersey City, par 71, 7,370 yards. The green sizes are 4,500 square feet, which is similar to last year at Ridgewood, so much smaller than normal. I think this would make them the third smallest on tour behind Pebble and Harbor Town, maybe?
That's
one of those.
Harbor Town's always the small one.
Yeah. And then fairway widths are 28 to 34 yards wide, so about tour average. Winning score here, they've had two previous trips to Liberty National, and then last year with the President's Cup. But in the previous events they've had here for, I think then it was the Barclays, was -10. And so you do have a course, and I know you've already mentioned liking golf courses that the scoring isn't just ridiculously low. And so I think this course kind of fits that bill. You have water coming into play on 12 holes. You have very small greens that are surrounded by water. You have some holes like number, I think 11 is 250-yard par 3 to a small green with water surrounding the green. And so there's a lot of difficult holes, I think you'll see some really big numbers by some of these guys. And I expect to see kind of an 8 to 11 under type winning score this week. From a weather perspective, everything looks fine right now, but it's the East Coast, so it could change right now. But what are you seeing on your end as far as the course goes? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it. And then as far as that winning score goes, I think that's like the perfect score. You know, I think guys need to be rewarded if they shoot 4 or 5 under par. They can make up a lot of ground on the field. I think that's a great place to be. I think for this week, I just have two kind of things to add. You know, we've got the difference between course history and tournament history, right? We don't have a lot of course history at Liberty National because, as you mentioned, 2013, 2009, and the 2017 President's Cup. That's it. Like, we don't get this on the yearly Rota or anything like that. So, you know, temper your course history expectations, but I think there is a little bit to glean from, you know, what we'd call tournament history. Obviously at different courses, but this is still the first event of the FedEx Cup playoffs. It is always held at the same time of the year, and it's always going to be the top 125 golfers in the field. So you're getting a similar strength of field every single year, which is something I think that you can take away from it. Additionally, with it being the only cut event for the playoffs, they're going to cut it at 70 in ties, but a significant portion of these golfers are going to get through to the weekend. You're going to have a lot more 6 of 6s. Weeks like this, I tend to lean on my studs a little bit more. I don't know how you usually play this, Bucks, but if you can guarantee me or almost guarantee me Brooks Koepka for 4 rounds instead of, if he shoots one bad round, he misses the cut. Usually the studs, the cream rises to the crop over these 4 rounds, and they tend to finish a little bit better. That's generally how I play this.
Yeah, and I'm in the same mindset. I think, especially this year, when you only have 3 events to really turn things around, and you're playing for $15 million.
Yeah, just a few bucks.
Yeah, and so the guys like the Brooks, I mean, notorious for not having motivation in regular events, but we've seen it in the past. We've seen it recently. When he gets motivated, especially if there's big money on the line with a stud field, he's going to come out firing. And I think that outside of the majors, obviously, this is what everybody wants. They want to be the playoff winner. They want to get that big paycheck at the end. And so I tend to agree. Real quick, the last thing I want to add to what you're mentioning, there is a course rotation. The cool thing about it is, like you said, you do have a fairly star-studded field. You got the top 125, and so you have some data there to go off of. And then if you look at just different courses, but if you look at the yardage, you look at the par, and then you look at the green sizes from Ridgewood as well, I think it's a course that has enough comparison that you can use that to get some information as well. You're not going to go super, super low at Ridgewood. You're not going to go super, super low here. The courses are somewhat similar. And so I think there's a lot to go off of outside of, and I'm glad you touched on that. Outside of that, what stats are you focused on this week?
Yeah, so I'm not putting as much weight on the key stats as I would, but obviously we still need to look at it. I run this model every week with all the PGA Tour stats versus the course data. We don't have as much course data, but the things that come up, like you've got to be a great ball striker, which makes sense when you look at the green sizes. Approach shots, for example, are always going to be highly correlated to success. So you already have that. You've got the small greens. Bogey avoidance popped up again, which again makes sense because this is not going to be 22 under par. If it's 10 under, those guys that can just make par, kick the can down the road a little bit, like those are valuable golfers. And then the thing that I tend to look at week in and week out is guys who are putting below their baseline, using their baseline as some longer form of, hey, how many strokes gained do these guys use, or how many strokes do these guys usually gain or lose on the putting greens, and then where are they at right now? And with putting being so volatile, we usually see that's the easiest thing to rebound for. So those are usually my buy low opportunities.
Yeah, you'll see that putting stat normalize a little bit quicker than the majority of the other things, for sure. For me, I'm in the same boat. So I have bogey avoidance. Ball striking is huge for me for the exact same reasons. You have small greens. You have to hit the greens to give yourself these opportunities. And then for the same reason, I mean, it's 7,370 yards as a par 71. And you have, I think, 6 par 4s over 450 yards and 1 par 5 that's super long. And then you have a couple par 3s where you're going to be hitting long irons and fairway woods into these greens. And so having the guys that excel in ball striking, excel in greens and reg, bogey avoidance is going to be key this week. Because you're right, the winning score is going to be right around single digits. And so it makes that stat even more important. One thing I want to cover real quick before we get into the picks is something that we talk about every week, but I want to get your opinion, obviously, with you being well-versed in the industry. A lot of guys know kind of what Gut plays, what I play, what Tambo plays in terms of weekly contests. Me and Gup are typically like the 3 max type players. At most have like 4 or 5 lineups a week. Tambo's the max entry specialist. Like that's his gig. He hates just having a couple bullets. So where do you fall in that spectrum? And then last question would be, and this is something that we've started doing on a weekly basis because a lot of people started asking for it. Where do you fall on that spectrum? And then if you only had $100 to play with this week, where would you throw that money?
Got it. Okay. I might fall in the middle of those two discussions because I don't usually get into the 150 lineup scene as much. A few times a year where I think there's an edge or I think that something's going on, like the match play, for example, like that was an easy one. It pops up a couple times a year. But I do not enter contests that I'm not going to max enter. If it's 3 max, I'm obviously maxing it. That's why I think the 20 max becomes such a great spot for me. So I've found a lot of success in the birdie, which is usually like the $3 or $4, depending on what it is, the 20 max each week. I use a core cascading method where if you're not familiar with what that is, I create basically one core lineup of 6 golfers. And then I kind of expand that one lineup, replacing each golfer in that lineup 3 or 4 times to get out to 20. So I'm laser focused on this one core. If this core hits, if this core goes 6 of 6, I'm going to have a lot of bullets to win it, which I did at the Masters. I came close to the Memorial again this year. It's a super high risk, high reward strategy. But that's what I play. It's maxing everything. And then if I had $100, so I would probably play that $3 20 max, so the birdie, so that's 60. You could play Mayo's rake free event, that's 15.
That's it. You have to play that one. Yeah,
you have to play it. So even if you put one lineup in that, that's 75. Then you could go enter, like a single, like the $12 single entry, something like that. But what I would do is I'd immediately I always break my rule about max entering everything. I break it once because I take my core lineup and I throw it in like that $5 $100,000 to first.
Oh, you have to.
I'm not going to make the nut lineup and make like $3,000 when there's $100,000 at the top. I
100% feel you.
So that's the only time I do
it every week.
Yeah, that's the only time I kind of break the rule. Everything else, I'm max entering. It doesn't necessarily mean 150 lineups, but I'm max entering everything.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, and I do the same thing. So I know that it's a terrible play, but I'm throwing my 3 lineups in the $5. The 44 is a little bit better, obviously, but the $5, I'll throw them in there, understanding it's a pure lottery ticket. And I'm doing it for self-preservation because if one happened to hit and it wasn't in there, I'd go off on somebody.
Yeah, it's pure FOMO. I understand that. Yes, to your point, it's literally I don't. Honestly, this happened because I know a lot of people do it, but when I won the birdie last year, I just made like 60 different lineups and spread them across tournaments, basically at random. And I had the lineup that would have won the million and it won $10,000 instead or whatever. And I was just like, I was so happy, but also fuming at the same time. Like, I don't know. It's a weird feeling.
I completely understand that. All right. That's awesome. Well, let's get into what everybody wants to hear. And that's kind of who we like this week in our picks. We do something called the Dirty Dozen. And so I'm going to give you tiers of pricing, and I want you to pick 3 guys in each tier. So the first tier is going to be any 3 guys, 9K or above. Who do you like this week?
Okay. I assume I have to give some rationale on why I like these guys, right? That's
yeah, as much as you want. I mean, you can give me names.
No. I'll back it up. I didn't want to do it. So
it's going to be the fastest podcast we've ever had. That's great.
Right? Just 12 names straight through. So for me, I think the first guy that jumped off the screen was Justin Thomas. He's sitting there at $10,000. We could talk about him later when it gets to kind of betting, but there's 2 versions of Justin Thomas that we've seen. There is pre-injury and post-injury. You remember he, for whatever reason, like first or second round at the Honda, for no reason necessary, tried to hit that hero shot, banged his club on the tree.
Ridiculous.
Like, dude, you're playing for a lot of money. You're like playing for majors. You're playing for the FedEx Cup playoffs. Not a shot to hit like second round of the Honda.
Yeah.
But he jumps off there because before that wrist injury, he was gaining about a quarter of a stroke per round on the greens. Putting is the one thing that didn't come back when this wrist injury happened. And post-injury, he was losing about 3/4 of a stroke per round on the green. So that's a stroke per round. All other things even that he's just leaving out there. But now whether he couldn't get the feeling right or whatever it is, like he's losing it. 5 straight tournaments he lost strokes putting after the tournament until the WGC FedEx, where he gained like a half a stroke over 4 rounds. So it wasn't a lot, but it was nice to see that he kind of put the brakes on this really bad run that he's been going on. So I'm hoping that is a sign.
And he's still been contending. He's still been contending through that.
He's still been awesome otherwise. His tee to green game has been great. So I don't know if that injury was just like, he's got a different feeling in his putting stroke or whatever it is, but it just hasn't been the same. And I'm hoping we're at like the very, beginning of that uptick where if we wait one more week, if he goes out and puts the lights out this week and wins it, like we're late. So I'd rather be early than late.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. You want me to keep going here or you want to go?
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Webb Simpson, I think, is kind of a no-brainer. He's sitting there. He's sitting there at $9,400. I don't think we realize, like, it's very easy for us to rattle off, okay, he's got 3 second-place finishes in his last 5 starts. I think that's very easy to say, but I don't really think he's as appreciated as he should be. The dude shows up in big events over and over again. Here's just the last couple majors, right? Yeah. So 30th at the British Open, 16th at the US Open, 19th at the PGA, 5th at the Masters. Then you go back to last season, the Tour Championship 4th and 6th at the BMW. That doesn't even count. Yeah. What do you win? The Players Championship last year? Like the dude contends over and over and over again, and he's never considered a lead or anything like that because he doesn't do anything sexy. He doesn't drive it like Rory does. He doesn't putt like Ricky. He just like does everything really well, and it's not sexy, and he continues to show up and post these numbers. So like I'm stoked to get Webb at 94 this week.
Yeah, I love that call. Who's your last guy?
And then my last guy is Justin Rose, 9,600. This kind of comes from, I think Rosie is probably one of the safer options on the board, quite frankly. He continues to show up in big events. We know he can win majors. He can win playoff events. And this kind of came out of like a Twitter conversation that we had where somebody asked me, how often do these studs pay off their value? And I kind of went through and dug through it and like, okay, let's determine what pay off their value means and if they're worth it or not. And the one guy that paid off his value, over 9K, over 10K, more than anyone else was Justin Rose. Like 45% of the time he gets it. So for me, he's just one of the safer options, and he's just always contending. He's playing well, always under the radar.
Yeah, I'd agree. Rose is one of those guys that it's almost like he's never getting himself into big trouble that you'll see from a Rory at times, from a DJ at times, from a Rahm at times. He's just super, super, super consistent. And when he clicks, that's why he was number 1 in the world for a while, because he did everything well and then all of a sudden got that extra stroke around and dominated.
Yeah, he never plays himself out of a tournament. And then last time we were at Liberty National, so that 2013 edition, second place finish to Adam Scott. So he's at least got some good vibes here for the Northern Trust.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I'll start at the top and I'll go Rory because I love Rory. I love where his game is at. Obviously, a disappointing British. For obviously a number of different reasons, but he had a stellar Friday round at the British, and then he played really well following that event. I think that keeping the ball in play at this golf course, obviously with all of the water, is extremely important. And I view Rory as one of the best, if not the best, drivers of a golf ball on the planet. And I love the way that he's coming into the playoffs. He's supremely confident, obviously. And I think that his ball striking is there as well. So I love Rory this week. I mean, you can make a case for just about anybody, but I love Rory this week. especially $600 less than Brooks. It's hard to argue against Brooks, but I love that that a little extra savings that you get from going to Rory. Justin Thomas was my number 2 guy.
Nice.
For the exact same reason. I think it's always about finding a guy that's rounding into form before he's rounded fully into form. And I think he's there. And I think that you've seen him hit the ball really well. And like you said, there's something up with his putting, and it's probably mental, but he started turning that around his last event. He's getting onto a golf course where I think he's going to have much more confidence that the opportunities he's going to give himself with his iron play is going to pay dividends. And I think that confidence is going to translate to the greens. And I think he has a chance to win this week.
Yeah, I think he's going to look back. Sorry, not to interject. I think he's going to look back and be like, he kind of, I don't want to say he wasted like the last 4 or 5 months. I hope he's going to make kind of better decisions moving forward, but he's a guy that should be contending in all of these, man. Like, it's just so crazy that he put himself in this position. I'm hoping we're past it. I agree with you. I hope this is the end. We get Justin Thomas again.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, when you saw him last year, even earlier this year, like, he was in and he still is right now, but he was in the conversation of, you could pick him every week and I'd feel confident that he has a chance to win. And there's not a lot of guys like that, but he's one of them. But I think, to your point, getting him for $2,000 less than Brooks this week provides a ton of room to play around, and there's a ton of value there. And with Fleetwood playing really well, with Rose, with Simpson, with Rahm, with Rory, I think there's a chance, because people are going to look at his stats and purely his stats, and they see Rory number 1 or 2 in every category. And then you look at Thomas and he's 40th, 50th, 20th, and they're going to be like, yeah, I'll move on. So I think there's a chance to get him at a little bit of a suppressed ownership as well, which is nice. My last guy in this range, I love Simpson, love Rose, but the last guy I'm going to go with is Fleetwood. I really like the way he's coming in to this event. I like the way he's playing right now. He's played well at similar type golf courses, and he's a ball striker. And I think that this is just one of those events where I can see him. Here's what I expect to see from Fleetwood. I expect him to shoot like even coming out of the gate, and then 7 under Friday, and then even, and then 5 under or something to take it, or something like that.
What's cool about Fleetwood is he's great for DraftKings scoring.
Absolutely.
He can get scorching hot. He gets you the birdie streak. He gets you the low round of the day. All of that stuff is squarely in play when Fleetwood tees it up. He usually always outperforms his, tournament finishing position with his DraftKings scoring. It's really impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. He is like and maybe not right now, but last year in particular, Finau was like that. Like, he always outperformed his finishing position on DraftKings. It was insane.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next category, which is going to be our second tier, and I'll kick us off here. $7,600 to $8,900. I'm going to start from the bottom up. First guy, and I'm not sure, it's going to be interesting, but the first name that jumped out at me when I looked at the course, because I try not to look at any stats until I do like the course preview, and then I'll think who I think fits the course. And then I'll look into it. Gary Woodland is the guy that immediately came to mind, with solid driving off the tee. He's going to keep himself in play, solid iron player, and it all comes down to the flat stick. But with the greens this small, I think with his ball striking, with his driving, I think he can give himself more opportunities than the average player. And he's coming in at $7,800. Then after digging into it, he played really well here in 2000 and whenever they had 2009 or 13. He played really well here. And so I do like Woodland. Yeah, 13. I do like Woodland. The next guy, which is kind of a no-brainer for me, is Billy Horschel. Guy's just been playing phenomenal golf. He's one of those guys that I view like a Webb, and not to his level, but he's always flying under the radar a bit. I mean, everybody kind of looks at his name, but he's not that sexy pick, so they kind of move over. So I do like Horschel a lot. Solid ball striker, solid driver of the golf ball. His putting has been solid as well. And then the last guy, and this is one of those in the same category kind of as JT for me. I almost never play this guy, but I feel like he's just rounding into the right form, and that's Xander Schauffele. And I don't know if I've played him at all this year, and I will be playing him this week just because I want to hit him right before he peaks, and I think he's close.
I love it. Okay, so this is going to be awesome because I mean I like all those guys. I think those are very logical thought processes. I've got all three of your pivots right here. I got like the guys next to them for each and every one of these. Okay, so we'll start at the bottom here. 7,700. I've got Matt Wolff as someone who I think is really interesting. So normally, so I went back and looked at this, and I tried to find like. You got to stay away from rookies. You got to stay away from guys who haven't won on the PGA Tour yet. Obviously, he has already captured that first win, but like a playoff event is usually not where someone gets their first win. So we've kind of crossed that off. But Wolff is really a wild card here. If you go back and look at last week's leaderboard, he was basically, I think he finished 19th in the tournament, but 12th in DraftKings scoring. He's another one of those guys that gets the birdie streaks going. He was excellent tee to green, and he lost strokes on both off the tee and around the green, which those are the two best aspects of his game.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm thinking like, hey, okay, we know how long he is. We know how hot he can get. I think he's certainly volatile, right? Like his range of outcomes is bigger than a lot of the other guys in this range. Like I think Gary Woodland has a much smaller range of outcomes. He's a little more consistent, but Wolff to me is like, he's proven his chops, get him in a situation where, he's playing well coming in. And of course that he should be able to take advantage of, and let's see what happens. Like let's put a little fire under his feet and see how he reacts to it.
Yeah. No, and $7,700 for a guy with that upside is awesome. So yeah.
Yep. Your Billy Horschel pivot, which actually I'm interested to see how many guys put both of them together. Cause I guess you don't necessarily need a pivot down here. You could play both of these guys, but Patrick Reed at 8,100.
I love Reed this week.
He's one of the hottest players on tour right now. I mean, he's coming in, he's gained strokes tee to green in 5 of his last 6 tournaments. He had one bad round at the Wyndham that he played himself out of it. It's that situation where he shoots even par on Saturday. Like you can't shoot even par at the Wyndham. You can shoot even par here this week and probably not lose any ground to the field on a Saturday and not play yourself out of it. But his 3 other rounds were great. Just another guy who seems to be knocking at the door. Obviously it wasn't Liberty National, but he's won this event in the past. He's got a handful of additional top 20s. He just feels really, really close, and he's a streaky player. So you either want to just like buy in on this streak or stay away from it. So I'm buying it.
I dig it.
And then my last pivot. So you had Xander, and I'm really interested to see, and I'd like your take on this, Bucks, what the ownership is going to look like for Adam Scott. Because I think you have some converging trends here. You've got like, if you forget the last 2 starts, you cut him a break at the Open Championship because anybody can get wiped out there, and a lot of people do get wiped out there. He plays like kind of mediocre at the WGC, but before that he was awesome for like 6 or 8 straight starts. His stats are elite. He's still like one of the best tee to green players, and even if you look at strokes gained total, he's like second on tour this season.
Yeah, he's a top 5 guy outside of almost in every category except for one.
Right. And he's got the 2013 win on his resume here at Liberty National, but those, I think there's a lot of recency bias in ownership, quite frankly. It's guys that miss cuts or guys that are playing well. It tends to dictate that. So I don't know what you think he's going to check in at, but I can't stay away from this guy. I'm kind of addicted to him.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to guess his ownership right now, just with looking at kind of who's around him, I mean, you have Xander, Tiger, Cooch, Molinari. I could see him being in that like 17% range, 16, 17% range. And for me, honestly, he was another one that when I looked at the course, I was like, this is the course setup for him. And that makes sense since he won here a couple years back. But it all comes down to one club for me. And I played him at the British and saw that he was using the short putter, and then saw him miss like 4 putts inside 3 feet. And he's one of those guys that right now, if he's using the long putter, I am perfectly fine with saying go all in, have at it. Cause he's, again, $8,800, and I think you have 10K upside easily. Yeah. But if for some reason, and this is a personal opinion, but if for some reason I see him out there with the short stick, and for some reason he's out there and puts it in play, like there's a 0% chance that I could play him.
Yeah, this is like, we need someone on the grounds like Thursday morning when he's warming up, like an hour before, like shoot out a tweet, man. Let us know what he's got in the bag. Cause I actually think at the WGC he switched. I think he started with, or I don't know which way he went, but he played like 1 or 2 rounds with each of them. I'm like, bro, like,
why?
I understand.
How does he even think that it's an option? He's so bad.
I don't know. Maybe he just thinks it's like corn. I don't know. Like I honestly have no explanation on why he tries that short putter. It's so bad. But the rest of the game is there. Significant upside. I'm dying to see what that ownership's going to be.
Yeah, I can tell you if we get wind that it's the short stick, like on Wednesday, it's going to be low.
I think that's probably fair. Yeah.
But who knows, man? And I don't understand why you would even bother trying that. I mean, pull a longer and just play with the long stick forever. It works.
Right. It's not like they're taking it away from you, right? Like it made sense when he had the long putter and he was like trying to get used to the new one, or, the short putter before the rules would change. Like, bro, you got it. Like, just keep rolling with the broomstick.
I don't know. Somebody's chirping in his ear about something, I guess, but it's ridiculous. All right. I'm going to kick it over to you. Third tier is 7,500 or less. Give me 3 guys.
Okay. One name that kind of stands out to me a little bit is Ryan Palmer. It's weird, right? Like sometimes after guys win, I guess it's not that weird. They can kind of go on these little stretches, especially if they haven't won in a while, where, okay, I've got my tour card locked up. I can kind of coast through the next couple rounds or next couple weeks. But, he wins the event with Jon Rahm. So it's almost like he didn't get full credit for the win, and he's just been playing well. Yeah. It's like he's been playing well ever since, right? 6th at the Charles Schwab. He's played well at the RBC, the John Deere, even the Barracuda. He had a top 10 last week. So he's just one of these guys that I think is really solid. We've seen him show up at this playoff event in the past. So his last 3 starts at the Northern Trust are a 5th place, a 13th, and a 6th. He's a seasoned pro. This is not a stage that is too big for him, which I think it is for a certain percentage of the field. And I just think he's really solid and he's playing well right now. I can back him.
Yeah, I like Palmer. He's a guy that I've been on most of the year, and he's been playing great. He's found his driver. That's typically the big issue I have with him, but he's found it. He's kept it in play, and he's made the most of it. Yeah.
Next up for me is a guy just short term. I've been playing a lot of. He made my core last week, and it's Russ Henley. He goes out. He gets 2nd place at the John Deere. He plays well at the opposite event, at the Barracuda, and he played well enough at the Wyndham. Right, he finished T31. But he made a bunch of birdies. He got hot. His tee to green game is never going to be the issue. Put up a couple crooked numbers, I think, on Saturday or Sunday to kind of play himself out of contention. But he was hovering for a long, long time. And again, you get him into this situation where, there's few guys, I guess, from this range, from his peers down here, that can get hot enough on approaches. And Henley is that kind of guy.
Yeah, his iron play is phenomenal.
Right.
Phenomenal.
Right. So you make a couple putts and, he sneaks into the top 10 and he's paid for himself a few times over.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then speaking of guys that can't putt, Bucks, that should be like the name of my podcast is like, speaking of guys that can't putt.
Guys that can't putt.
Corey Connors is down here and he breaks the model almost every week because he's got such a great tee to green game.
Yeah.
He does have what some of these other guys down here don't, which is a win this year or a win recently. So good to see him pile it on again. He's been playing well. in recent weeks. And it's just like, hey, go out and be an average putter. You go out and be an average putter. And
that's all you're looking for. He's going to contend.
You're going to contend every single week. He's that good. Yeah. So I like his chances, and he's super cheap. He's like
6,500 bucks, man.
Yeah. So if you're going for a, like if you're trying to get Brooks in there, you're trying to get Rory in there, and you don't want to have to play a bunch of $7,200 guys or whatever that takes away from you, like he can provide a little relief on the other side of it.
Yes, absolutely. So I'll start there because he was my third option in this range. I love Connors, and for the exact same reasons, I love a guy like this on tiny greens that is a very, very good ball striker. And I love just looking at his stats because it's like 80th in bogey avoidance, 90th in strokes gained, 100th in scrambling, 119th in putting, 7th in ball striking, 15th in proximity. Like, he's such a good ball striker. And
so good.
And he's so bad on the greens. He just needs one mediocre week and he's going to be fine. Even if he hits his irons the way that he normally does and gives himself more opportunities in the field, he will make the cut. And he's $6,500. And so I love that play this week, especially when you want, like you said in the beginning of the pod, you want as many studs as possible because the cream is going to rise. And so I will definitely be looking, if I have, let's say, 5 lineups this week, at least 2 or 3 will have Connors in there for me, because I'm going to want to try to get 1 or 2 studs up top. Moving up the board, I really like Lucas Glover this week. A guy that has been playing really well most of the year, and he's just steady. Yep. He's been a solid iron player. He's kept it in play off the tee, which is normally a concern for me. And then his proximity numbers are solid. So tiny greens, good proximity numbers, giving himself more opportunities in the field. I like his chances to make the cut and kind of move on. And so $7,300 for that guy, I'll take it. And in the same vein, I think Connors, Glover, and this next guy, when we're talking about like really good iron players, is Yoki Niemann. Really, really, really solid iron player. I mean, like really good. And he's just good all around. He's one of those guys, though, that has been struggling historically with the putter. But again, you're talking about a guy that hits the ball just phenomenally well off the tee into the greens. And especially on a course like this where you're going to be hitting quite a few long irons, I want a guy, especially for $7,500, I want a guy that has, if you put him, I would put him in the same category as most of the 9 to 10K guys when it comes to iron play. And so hopefully that translates this week because I really do like him a lot. I think personally his ownership is going to be pretty high. I'm glad that Sanjay is right next to him, because if it was like Sanjay at 7,900 and you had Reeve, Hatton, Bubba, Sergio Kokrak right there, I think he'd be super chalk. So I think that'll suppress it a bit, but I still think he's going to be super popular. But at some point, you got to play the guys that you like. Niemann's one of them. JB, I wasn't on the E9. I assume Gup told Niemann's hole-in-one story. Yeah, so Niemann and Kazire, Patton, right? Basically had a hole-in-one bet on the practice round at the Wyndham and had a large stack of money on the line for a hole-in-one, and Niemann just drained it.
So good.
And so it's pretty awesome. So yeah. So let's move on to the last category. Rick, I'll kick it over to you first. This one's a little bit different. I want you to give me one flop. So this would be any price, but you just don't think they're going to return the value.
Okay. One
fade. So anybody you want to fade, normally it's like an ownership reason. And then one sleeper. So $6,900 or less, like Connors that we were just talking about.
Got it. All right. So let's start with the flop. I will have probably 0 shares of Francesco Molinari. Like big fan of his game. I'm really concerned about his length. I think he's going to be hitting long irons into every single green. I think he has very few outs to get there this week because he plays a very specific type of game. And for whatever it is, he's only played the Northern Trust, or what is the first leg of the PGA, the FedEx Cup playoffs, 3 times, and he's missed the cut in all 3. I don't know if that is an anomaly. I don't know if it's an outlier. I don't know if it's something where this field is tough for him and he's tired at the end of the year, right? I don't know what it is, but it's concerning. And the fact that outside of the sprinkling in a few recent, decent finishes at majors, the rest of his results over the past probably 8 to 10 weeks haven't been all that inspiring. So Molinari, to me, I don't think he's going to garner a lot of ownership, so I can't call him a fade. I just think he's a flop.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. So he was going to be my flop. I don't like his game for this course for the same reasons. I think he's just kind of – I do typically like Molinari on golf courses where you don't have to go super, super low. But on a golf course that is this long where you do have to hit a ton of long irons, he hasn't been hitting his irons very well recently. And so I will be calling him my flop as well. Who do you have for your fade?
Got it. Yeah. So let's clarify this. Like I like this guy. You already mentioned it. It's Billy Horschel. Like I spent probably 20 minutes on my YouTube channel talking about him. Absolutely love it. I just think he's going to be super, super popular.
Yes.
And when you get to a certain level of ownership, there's probably some pivots. And I thought that he, amongst others, I agree. I think Neiman's going to be popular. I thought he was a little more difficult to pivot off of. I think that Billy Horschel is a fairly easy pivot. I mentioned Patrick Reed. If you have the money, you can go up and get Jason Day. If you want to be a contrarian, you could drop down and get Gary Woodland or someone who's been playing well, like Benny Ott. I just think there's easier pivots for Horschel. And if he's going to be checking in at the ownership that we kind of expect him to, you either have to take a stand and be significantly overweight or go get Reed, go get somebody else. So he's my fade here.
Gotcha. Okay. Who's your guy under $6,900?
All right. My homie, Andrew Landry, who is, hold on. How much is he? Okay, here he is. $6,700. Who I have now played like 3 or 4 weeks in a row. He's only made me look stupid like once or twice.
There you go.
But otherwise, okay, we saw him a little inspiration at the John Deere Classic. Played better than his finishing position dictated last time we saw him, which was at the Wyndham, where he finished 19th. He was another guy that was kind of up there in, 5th, 6th, 7th. And, he goes out and he shoots 3 under and he loses ground on the field. I don't necessarily need Andrew Landry in a birdie fest. The guy is straight as an arrow off the tee. I really like his game right now, and you cannot beat the price. He's priced to move, Bucks.
Yeah, I like him. I like him a lot. So my guy down low, obviously outside of Corey Connors, is going to be a guy that I've been on for a while now, and it has been decent, is Denny McCarthy at $6,600. Outside of a missed cut a few weeks ago, he has 3 top 30s, I think, in his last 4 events. His driving distance concerns me. He's not long off the tee, but he is a phenomenal iron player. He hits a ton of greens. He has not, at least in his last 4 events, made a ton of mistakes. And so I do like him on a golf course like this, where if he is grinding it out, hitting a lot of greens, I think he has a chance to obviously make the weekend. If he's getting his putter rolling, then I think he's going to be solid.
I was going to say, he also makes a ton of putts, Bucks.
Yeah.
I thought he was like number 1 or 2 in strokes gained putting. I'm trying to pull it up. He is a number 1 ranked putter on the PGA Tour. It's a ton of strokes.
Yeah, he's been just insane with the flat stick, and some of that is concerning, but it's been a while. This is his game. He hits his irons well, he putts well, and he's just super short off the tee.
Yeah, can I make a distinction here? Because I think you mentioned it earlier, and it was a very accurate point that strokes gained putting is very, very volatile round to round, week to week. But over the long term, it is one of the more consistent ones. Like when we saw Jason Day go on that run where he was just the world's best putter for a handful of years, that's great. That stuff, over the long term, it is very consistent. I'm not concerned to see a guy who's, gaining a stroke per round on the greens over the course of an entire season, that's indicative that he's a really good putter, not just like some noise. So I think that is a very important distinction that we make.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I like using the putting stats as like you do, like a baseline to see, okay, if they normalize back to the baseline, how would they perform based on everything else? And so that's why I really like Denny. My fade this week, let me get up to him. My fade this week, and this is going to be, I'm glad Gup's not on this podcast because he might just turn it off, is my fade's going to be Hideki Matsuyama. He's one of those guys that a lot of people are going to be enamored by his stats and immediately get drawn to the name because he has historically been a very, very, very good ball striker. But in recent weeks, something is up, and that has not translated to score. And this is not a golf course that you can go to and hope to just scrape by hitting the ball mediocre. And so he's going to be my fade this week. And I'll die on that hill for a while.
I got off him last week, and I kind of thought it was a little bit of both things. I thought he might be tired. I thought it might be the end of the year. He's played a lot of golf recently. He might be worn out. But you're right. His out is hitting the ball to 3 feet because he can't make anything longer than that. And if that doesn't go well for him, he's in big trouble.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at like, let's just say start of the year, I mean, he had a ridiculous run where he had like 2 events up until the British where he was outside the top 30 in any event, which is just mind boggling. And then all of a sudden at the British miscut, 43rd at the St. Jude, miscut at the Wyndham. I mean, at some point he'll be back, but this is one of those things where this isn't the course that I want to take a guy that's coming in poor form ball striking and hope that he just clicks and finds it, because there's so much trouble lurking around on this golf course. And so
works for me. Cool.
Yeah, he'll be that guy that I kind of die on the hill. Last kind of thing in this category, because I know we are running a bit late. Let's do rapid fire. So I'm going to give you 2 names, like a couple different of these categories, and just give me first one that comes to mind. Who would you rather play? First section is Brooks or Rory?
Brooks.
I would go Rory, obviously. Simpson or Rose? This one's a tough one.
This is really tough. Justin Rose.
I would go Rose as well, although I do love Simpson, but I do like Rose. Now, this is one I mentioned earlier, because if I had put this at the beginning of the year or at any other point in time, it would just be laughed at. But Bryson or Morikawa?
I hate that you're doing this to me, but Morikawa.
You know, I actually, when I wrote these 2 down, I actually had to kind of deep dive into it because my snap said Bryson, but after digging into it and recent results and form and kind of coming in with the flat stick and the irons, I would go Morikawa as well. The guy's a stud, been on fire. He can get it done. He's like you said, this isn't normally the rookie event, but he's proven his chops. And he's just a sick iron player, ball striker.
Not a normal rookie either.
No. Pick one guy out of these 3. Matsuyama, Jason Day, Tony Finau.
God. Jason Day. I hate it all. I hate them all.
I would go Jason Day because of the flat stick. But I do like that Tony had a good week.
So I think Finau can be the guy who like leads in DraftKings scoring. I think Day, I don't believe he's just washed. I don't.
No, he's not with the talent that he has and the intangible, like the driving distance. Like at some point he's going to click again and it's going to be ridiculous.
I agree.
Last one. And again, this is a little bit lower. Piercy or Glover?
Glover. I like Glover.
I would go Glover as well. I do like Piercy in kind of lower scoring events because he can take it deep at any given moment. But I will go Glover this week. I'm going to skip over the round table because we are running a bit late. Okay. We'll cover a lot of that stuff in like the E9 and then also with kind of the picks and in the Slack. And I know you're going to be talking about guys on your podcast and your YouTube channel. While we're at it, why don't you throw out your socials outside of Twitter.
Yeah, sure. So YouTube is Rick Run Good. DFS On Demand podcast. You can search Rick Run Good and find it, and then dfsondemand.com.
Perfect. Love it. Let's do a little bit of betting.
Cool.
So I'm going to kick it over to you first.
Okay.
This is a popular segment, obviously, for Gup, kind of his bread and butter. But if you had to take anybody under 40-1, who would you take?
For me, this is Webb. I think he's proven that he can win these big events. It's nice to see him off of that like 9-1 number or whatever we got him at last week. This is much more in Webb's wheelhouse, and he's he didn't do anything in fact he didn't do anything the last week to change our opinion on him at all, except show how underrated he is. So he's my guy.
Yeah, I like that as well. I mean, I do like Webb at 25. I would go Fleetwood at 22. But I do like the Webb call. I think JT at 20 is definitely viable as well. I'm not normally a fan, though, of playing guys kind of down low in this range. I try to find a middling guy or kind of a long shot and hope they hit kind of deal. I know Gup had like Morikawa and some others a few weeks back. I'll start us off in the 45 to 75 range because there are a lot of guys that I really like down here. But if I were to pick, let's just say 2 guys, I think Reed at 50, I love. And I know you've already mentioned him, so I'm sure he was on your radar as well. And Gary Woodland at 70. Those are the 2 guys that I would play in this range.
Yeah, so those were my exact 2. I think it makes complete sense. I will say this, that I'd prefer to bet Billy Horschel than play him on DraftKings because you're not worried about ownership.
Well, exactly.
So I think that's a logical place if you want to get exposure to him, which I actually have already fired a click on him. That feels better to me.
There you go. So who do you have from 80 to 120? Anybody down here you like?
The two young guns. So Matt Wolff and Joaquin Niemann. I think that you nailed the Niemann stretch, which is, Niemann was what everything we were saying about Wolff, Morikawa, Hovland this year, we said the same thing 18 months ago.
Absolutely.
And he came out scorching hot and he led the field in every statistical category. And, and it went away. And that's because golf's hard and these kids are young and it's possible. But this is the best stretch of his career. Again, I thought you summed it up perfectly.
I remember it was at the beginning of this season or maybe even in the fall swing where Niemann had jumped from like 7,800 to like 8,900 in a week. And I was like, you still got to play him because this is potentially the lowest you'll ever see him again.
Right.
Because he was just so good for a stretch there. And yeah, I mean, golf is hard. He's lost a little bit of it, but the ball striking is still there. So the only guy in this range that I would put money on is Niemann, which is right around, I'm seeing at 100, but anywhere between 80 and 100, which is, I personally think, phenomenal for a guy with the skill set he has. Is there anybody over 120 that you would give consideration? I would assume Corey Connors, but who else are you looking at?
Yeah, Corey Connors, and then the other guy I'm cheating a little bit because I see him at 110 is Jim Furyk, who was a little bit inspiring in his last start, but this is clearly the best season of Jim Furyk's career in a long time. Back in 2013, last time this was at Liberty National, I think he was a second place finisher. There was a tie for second, so it was like him, Gary Woodland, et cetera, behind Adam Scott. And this is a long course, and I think bombers are always going to have an advantage. But there are a few forced layups, which kind of brings it back to the rest of the field a little bit. And then the other thing about Furyk that I like, especially if this winning score is like, I'd love it to be like 8 under or like 9 under, where he's never going to give it away. He's not going to play himself out of it. Par is a good score at times, and he can make a lot of pars.
Yeah. So I think the initial hang-up, and I think everybody's initial hang-up, will be the driving distance conversation. And can he keep up with everybody else when he's 40 yards behind him? But I think it's exactly what you pointed out. Furyk isn't going to make a ton of mistakes like somebody else. He's going to grind it out. And yeah, he's been hitting the ball better this season than he has in a long, long time. So
Yeah.
I do.
It's also no surprise to Jim Furyk that he's shorter than everybody else, right? Like he's been doing it for a long time, though.
Yeah.
Like he can still get it there into. It's not like he woke up and lost 40 yards, but of course that's my concern. But if we didn't have concerns, he wouldn't be 110-1. He'd be like
Exactly. Yeah. And like you said, he knows that he's not long and he plays his game. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there that are not long that try to force the issue and we've seen it time and time again, guys that want to try to pick up 10, 15, 20 yards and their game goes to shit because they're changing their swing to get there instead of just playing what got them to the tour in the first place. So Corey Connors and Denny McCarthy, the only two past 120 that I would play. I think Denny's at like 160. Corey's at over 200 right now. And so I love both of those plays. Obviously, they're darts at a dartboard, but they have a higher propensity to contend than most other players in that range. So I dig it. Moving on to the last category of the evening, covering real quick is our one and done. I know you're a big fan.
Love the one and done.
Love it. Yeah, love it. Real quick, our boy Min Man still leading the event with 13.3 million, up by I think close to $600,000. So anything can happen these next 3 weeks in the playoffs. There's a lot of money at stake. For me, I have gained significant ground on Gup over the last few weeks. I'm at 5.4 million, only 2 million behind Gup. Rick,
you're running out of millions left.
Hey, I was at like 5 million a couple weeks ago.
All right, good. That's good.
I still have. So you're saying there's a chance? I'm still in that mindset. And I have Fleetwood. I'm picking Fleetwood this week. And so it's not like I'm completely out of options. Gup did not send me his pick, but I'm sure he's going to pick like Neiman or something. And so I'll hedge and play a bunch of Neiman on DraftKings. And then Rick, I think you're at what, 5.9?
I've got two lineups in it. So I have one that I pick every week, and I've got one that I set before the season started, which was a pretty cool exercise.
That's cool. Yeah.
It was a difficult exercise, and I think it was really worth it.
Do you ever change?
I've only had to change, I think, twice because the guy didn't end up playing that event.
Oh, okay.
The event that I had him in.
Well, I was going to ask about like JT's injury and if you had him during those weeks, or
I think I burned him like at the Sony Open or something like that.
What good call. Yeah.
But I've actually been doing better in segment 4, but I can't get my lineups right. Like each week I hit first or second, but it's in the wrong lineup, and I'm like just incrementally increasing both of them instead of like. Winning a bunch in one of them. But yeah, so for this week, I actually still have, so this is the one that I choose each week. I still have Webb Simpson left. And I think I saw that he was like 2,200 or 2,300 users have already burned him. So I assume I'm going to get him at a pretty good number.
You had a ton of people burned him last week. Tons.
Exactly. So I'll roll him out this week and see if I can sneak a win in there.
Yeah, so I have Fleetwood in my number one lineup for this purpose, for the pod and our charity bet. And then my second lineup, I'm actually 240th place. And so I'm in the money right now, which is good. And I am playing, just because I have him, I'm playing Rahm this week. He's coming in hot fire. So I was going to save him for East Lake, but I said, why not?
If you got him, use him, baby. Yeah, you might be out of it by East Lake. You got to go for it now.
Exactly. Yeah. There's only so many millions I can win.
That's right.
So I'm going to be using Ron with that second lineup. Rick, appreciate you coming on. Why don't you give us any final thoughts? Anything you want to say?
Yeah, no, I mean, the only thing I'll say, and I've told you guys this in private, but just so that like everybody and your followers know, I mean, the Gups Corner Crew is nothing but a bunch of class acts, and it's always
I could have gone in a very different direction there.
yeah, right. Like, I was about to air all the dirtiest laundry. No, it's awesome every time I get to chat with you guys, and I appreciate you having me on.
Well, we appreciate it too. everybody that's watching Corner OGs, as always, join us Wednesday night for the Emergency 9. It's going to be at 9 o'clock. I will be on this week. Tambo will be on this week. Gup will be on this week. It's going to be a really big live chat. And I think this week is going to be very, very important for a lot of people because of the Fantasy Golf World Championships, because of OAD kind of wrapping up and needing to get the right plays in, making sure there's no weather concerns. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons, but hop in that chat. It's going to be a big one. The last thing I will mention real quick is I just need to say or convey my thanks to the entire community. I have been dealing with a lot of things over the last month. Most recently, my sister passing, and it's been difficult the last few weeks. And inevitably, every time I look at my phone, every time I open Slack, there is another DM from somebody just saying that my family has been in their thoughts and their prayers. And it's the little things like that that mean the world, because Guff's Corner forever for me has been a positive escape. And I use that word intentionally. In my family, we believe that there's a big distinction between a distraction and an escape. And I personally feel that an escape is something that helps you heal. And that's exactly what the Guff's Corner community has been. Everybody on Twitter has been, and that's an escape for me and a way for me to kind of grieve and heal in a healthy way. And so I truly appreciate everybody out in the Guff's Corner community. It's going to be a really, really great week. I'm pumped to kind of be back on the pod, and I'm pumped to throw some lineups in this week and sweat. I felt like a piece of me was missing not sweating last week. So it was a good couple days to kind of get ready for the week. So I hope everybody out there is having a awesome Monday. I hope that when they watch this, if they're not watching live, that if you have any questions, again, hop in the E9 chat and we'll get talking to you soon.
SmashFactor.